Back in the ancient period known as the 90s, Humongous Entertainment, who made edutainment point-and-click adventure games like Putt Putt, Freddy Fish, and Pajama Sam, released a series of sports games under the banner Backyard Sports. This franchise spawned games for sports such as football, basketball, and hockey. None of these games would exist, though, without the granddaddy of backyard sports, Backyard Baseball, originally released in 1997. This title is fondly remembered for its cast of kids, such as franchise juggernaut Pablo Sanchez, and there would be several sequels for Backyard Baseball. Recently, Playground Productions dropped a trailer for a new Backyard Baseball, featuring pretty much everything the first game was known for, such as the old art style, and the return of seemingly the whole original cast. I for one am excited, however, I must make a confession. I never played Backyard Baseball.
What?
A shocker? I know, but I vividly remember the commercials, including one featuring
Mike Piazza
as a pro player. In spite of this, I never once begged my parents to buy me Backyard Baseball, and missed out as a result. With Backyard Baseball 2024's announcement, I reminded myself that it is never too late to go back and experience the greatness of the classics. This also got me thinking, things age, and we may not remember that things were as good as our nostalgia-tinted glasses would have us perceive. As such, I must pose this question. As a newbie, how would I feel about the original Backyard Baseball? Would I find this kids game, intended for 5 to 10-year-olds, to be a surprisingly deep introduction to America's pastime? Would this game be too simple to warrant checking out in 2024? Or would I find that this game aged worse than Sal Licata's declaration that the Mets won the NL East in 2022?
I hate you so freaking much.
This video expounds upon this topic. For most players, the first installment of Backyard Baseball is often regarded as the ideal experience. But for this video, I will be playing with Backyard Baseball 2001 mainly for two reasons. One, it features the pro players, including
Mike Piazza.
And two, through my lurking on the Backyard Baseball subreddit, I learned that 2001 and 2003 are said to be virtually the same game, which means it comes down to taste. Some believe the voices in 2003 did the series' characters injustice. As such, I chose 2001 because as Sonic the Hedgehog in anime has taught me, voice acting is serious business. As the game starts up, the wave of nostalgia immediately hits me with Humongous Entertainment's deranged soundbite that reminded me that this is by the same people who made Putt Putt, Fatty Bear, and Pajama Sam. Already I was at home and felt like I was 8 years old once more. It wasn't long before I saw
Mike Piazza
catching behind Sammy Sosa, followed by a dynamic zoom into Sosa's Backyard Baseball League branded bat, which is then succeeded by a hit towards Chipper Jones, who throws to Stephanie Morgan, who then throws to Larry Walker to turn a double play that's beautifully captured by the distinguishable 90s early aughts animation. The intro then shows many backyard kids and pros hitting baseballs with official Major League Baseball team logos onto the screen. Finally, we see Randy Johnson throwing a sidearm heater from a perspective which I can only assume belongs to the bird he hit almost a year later, confirming Backyard Baseball was predicting the future long before it was cool. I get into the treehouse, which, despite my never playing this, feels oddly welcoming and familiar, like I've been here in the past life. I see a few modes. Single game lets you play an exhibition game, do batting practice, and even spectate in case you want to simulate this year's World Series. Online play is available, or at least it was at the time. This mode appears to track your win-loss record and lets you register several names. Nowadays, it seems like a relic of the past, unless there are backdoor means that I'm unaware of. Hall of Fame allows you to look at teams that won the Division Championship, Divisional Playoffs, League Championship Series, and of course, the most coveted championship, the Backyard World Series. The Hall of Fame also lists the leaders in various categories, such as runs batted in, slugging percentage, earned run average, and even a more dubious honor, errors. Cards let you look at the available players, their descriptions, and skill ratings. They also show you if they bat left or right, or throw right or left.
Mike Piazza.
What I'll be focusing on, though, is the meat and potatoes, the only passage to backyard baseball greatness: season play. Season play lets you select what players you want to draft to your team and select your home field. You are allowed to select the difficulty, number of innings, if errors can occur, and toggle on and off the swing spot and pitch locator as you see fit. But be wary. Once you choose your settings, they cannot be changed. A particularly important decision was where my team would play. As I gazed upon potential home fields, the cement gardens caught my eye. I felt this place had that urban atmosphere that suited my team's culture. From the dumpsters in deep center field, the dirty aged apartment buildings, and the quaint espresso shop that sells overpriced coffee. Yep, this was the perfect place to call home. You may select any of the MLB teams to play for, or create your own team. Not wanting to ride the coattails of an established MLB team, instead, I wanted to create my own legacy in backyard baseball lore. Therefore, I opted to start an expansion team. Here we have 6 different teams to pick from. We are able to select our team's colors and our team's adjective. With these options in mind, what would I make my team? Obviously, I wanted a cool logo. I glanced at my choices, which were not many. Each choice is appropriately cartoony for a game of its nature. I settled on the Bombers to pay homage to Warriors' affinity to bombs. It made perfect sense. Next came the team's colors. In the spirit of the New York Mets and Kennesaw State Owls, I picked blue to represent the Mets and yellow to represent the Owls. Surely these colors would imbue my team with the spirit of winning. Then there was the first part of the team's name. What should my team be called? The Mighty Bombers? The Super Duper Bombers? Or should I go against the grain and call them the Red Bombers? I eventually went for the basic option and chose the Blue Bombers, as nothing beats alliterative appeal. Next came the draft. We go to the benches, seeing all the kids happy and animated as they eagerly wait to be picked to play. Looking at the players, all I could really go by at first glance was aesthetics. There were some players I knew that were superior, like Pablo Sanchez, but I didn't want to pick only the best players, so sorry Pablo, you didn't make the cut. Besides, would it have been realistic that the best player in the BBL immediately joined a new expansion team? I don't think so. I did know who I had to have on my team, though. For the most part, I picked players that I liked, but also fit the needs that my team needed. There was one kid who stood out to me. It was a rather translucent kid who had a question mark on their shirt. It turns out this is a player that you can create, so I figured, what better way to break in the Blue Bombers than to bring in a new face into the BBL? I kept the name as custom to be nihilistically cool, and not because I didn't know you can change the name by clicking on it. I then sifted through the nicknames and settled on Boom Boom because this kid would have an explosive offense, and I like the Super Mario enemy Boom Boom. With batting and running at 8, I was certain that he would be an offensive powerhouse. His pitching means he should be nowhere on the mound, but his fielding makes up for the lack of pitching. This then was my first genuine complete Blue Bombers lineup. I leaned back in my deep swivel chair and thought about how happy I was to run the Blue Bombers. I fantasized about how amazing this team could be. There was one thing: game options. I initially decided that I would play on medium difficulty with swing spot turned on, but that proved unsatisfactory. To truly appreciate the grandeur that is the BBL, I wanted to give myself the full backyard baseball experience. If the expansion Blue Bombers were to be the most dominant team in the BBL, they would have to beat the best of the best. I wanted to earn that championship if it came down to it. So, I set the computer to hard. I then turned swing spot and pitch locator off. Yeah, I'm in some serious business. I mean, after all,
what could possibly go wrong?
Now, the real game began. For Game 1, we are taking on the Cleveland Indians at home. Sunny Day and Vinny the Gooch welcome us to a beautiful day of baseball, as Luann eagerly awaits her first batter. Vicky Kawaguchi, playing on first for the Indians, dances up to the plate as if excited that she will be the first batter to ever face the Bombers. Luann throws a first pitch fastball for a strike and we're underway. To the right, we see that Luann has an arsenal of pitches at her disposal. Heat, slow ball, left hook, right hook, or intentional walk. The strategy that I started with involved switching between the 4 pitches while aiming for the outside corners to get strikes. I found that it wasn't too hard to strike batters out or get them to ground out. The first inning went pretty quietly, although I knew what I was up against. Playing against a hard CPU, I obviously had to be on my A game. I fully expected the CPU to be near perfect on defense, while taking advantage of every possible opportunity to score against us. With this, we have our first ever batter for the Bombers coming up to the plate, Stephanie Morgan. Stephanie Morgan walks up to the plate chewing her signature gum as she gets ready to be the first ever Bomber to bat for the team. To the right there are 4 levels of power: bunt, grounder, line drive, and power. I imagine that which power level you should swing at is best determined by the batting power of your batter. I usually defaulted to line drive or grounders for most hitters, whereas a power hitter like Mike Piazza I would have hit for power all the time. The batting itself is surprisingly simple and yet is more complex underneath the surface. When I first started, I thought I had to click on where the ball was going in the strike zone to hit the ball. This is actually not true. Rather, you can click a good distance away from the strike zone and they'll still swing, although your batter cannot move. So, is hitting the ball only a matter of timing? Not really. On top of home plate, there are batting stances squared, closed, and open. Depending on how good or bad your hitter is, it may be necessary to change your stance depending on where the pitch is located, but I'm not exactly sure. If I had to assume, I would probably think that squared works best with pitches in the middle of the strike zone, whereas open and closed work best with pitches in and outside of the strike zone. But if somebody wants to clarify this in the comments, please do. I will say that my switching between the 3 stances has helped my hitting quite a bit. Eventually I found myself resting the cursor on home plate while watching the ball like a hawk, so I could adjust my swing accordingly before the ball arrived and swing at the right time. In the second inning, the Bombers managed to strike first thanks to a single by Maria that manages to score Dimitri. So far, so good. It was a little after this point that I started to learn the finer points of defense. Randy Uno pops it up into center field. Pete, who barely had to move, got right under it in the middle of the green circle. I believed with 100% certainty that he would catch it, but instead, the ball bounced right in front of him and way high and out of play for a ground rule double. Apparently, it's just not enough to stand in the middle of the circle. It turns out, much like the swing spot, this is where the player thinks the ball will land. So, as the controller, one must take charge to get directly underneath the ball to catch it. After a sacrifice to move Randy over to third, Kenny Lofton gets a soft hit towards Luann, who easily fields it. In an attempt to keep the Indians from tying, I have her throw to Piazza at home, which makes Randy retreat to third. Piazza fires it back to Maria to tag her out, and she's safe? I could only wonder why Randy was called safe. Did Maria not tag Randy when she went back? Was the game using a margin for error to simulate IRL umpires failing to make the right call? It didn't matter now since challenges don't exist yet, and umpires' decisions are considered gospel and can never be undone under any circumstance. After 2 unfortunate plays, Luann pitches out of a tight spot to hold the Indians to no runs. In the bottom of the third, Piazza pops one up and the Indians' defense does nothing? Seriously, they just let the ball drop in for a free hit. So the AI isn't perfect. Either way, the Bombers stay in the lead with 1-0 going into the 5th, and Arlene Perez hits a single past Luann and then quickly steals second. With the tying run in scoring position, I figured, no big deal. We just gotta get out of this inning. Then Vladimir Womack does this. Yeah, well. What? What the hell? What?
You gotta have ESP to know
What
when
the-
that thing's
what?
gonna pop up.
What the f- What? What? Are you kidding? That's what the, what the, oh my god, what am I doing? What's my team doing? They're all lost their minds.
What the actual F was that?
Yep, this is a special hit known as the Undergrounder that basically guarantees a clutch hit. Among others I've seen are the Screaming Line Drive, the Crazy Bunt, and Aluminum Power, which all can serve in a pinch if every hard hit ball goes straight into a fielder's glove. With our defense disoriented thanks to that Undergrounder, things then began to fall apart. Another bad judgment caused the ball to fall that eventually allowed 2 more runs to score. We get out of the 4th with a 2-run deficit. Sadly, this would not be the end. In the top of the 7th, a comedy of errors allows an inside-the-park home run. The game concludes 4-1 Indians. Despite an 0-1 start, I continued being positive, because I knew this team had what it takes to win. Game 2 against the Detroit Tigers started off not ideal. A deep shot by enemy Lubel off the wall let a runner score from first. 1-0 Tigers. The Tigers scored again from the 4th. 2-0 Tigers. The Blue Bombers were making good contact all game, but every hard-hit ball would land in a player's glove like magnets, much to my frustration. But that's baseball, Susan. Into the 8th, defensive frustrations start to peak. After attempting to relay to Luan, Maynard pulls an Acuna and makes a break for second, while Luan throws to third for seemingly no reason. Seriously, why did she throw to third? Things started to get real Bombersy when Emily pops one over home plate, and I'll just let you watch. Alright, Piazza, get this. Yeah, you got that? Are you serious? You didn't f***ing get that? Are you f***ing... Oh, yeah, throw it to second now, Piazza. Throw it to f***ing second. Yeah, just, you know, throw it to second, sure. Oh, yeah, great. Yeah. This, along with my ignorance of the game's controls, caused my hope to wane a bit. But, with an eventual score of 7-0 Tigers, all I could do was say, on to the next. Which was even worse than the last, with the Minnesota Twins winning 14-1. I started to think that all I could do was pray that things got better. Was this how Casey Stengel felt when he was managing the 62 Mets? Still, like the old professor said back then, I don't know about that. Prayers don't win for you. You gotta do it yourself. With this in mind, at 0-3, things had to start looking up at some point. Right? And things did. The Bombers' offense managed to bludgeon the Indians with a final score of 7-1 to get their first win. Put it in the books! The World Series was back on the menu. With momentum on our side, we may very well never lose again. So, about that. At this point, I've accepted that the Blue Bombers basically bombed their first season. I could only use this season as a learning experience as a new BBL manager and do what was best for my roster. Getting on base had gotten easier, the problem was just getting them home. I won't lie when I say that, at times, it truly felt like my own defense was playing against me. I mean, having my infielders knock each other over? Having balls knock my players down when it should have been an out? Having a ball bounce off my third baseman go out of play for a double? With the amount of times this happened, I had to wonder if it was just horrid luck. I know these are kids, but... Really? Seriously, with the amount of times this happened, I could make a volume of super-duper baseball bloopers. Well, at least, Marvelous Marv Thornberry would be proud. Now, it doesn't go without saying that the hard CPU makes their own defensive flubs at times that's given me more breaks than I deserved. It's nice that you can turn the errors off, but where's the fun in that? After 7 straight losses, something clicked. Game 12 against the San Diego Padres saw the Blue Bombers put up 6 runs, thanks to an undergrounder hit by Markey to score 2 in the second, a single by Dimitri, and an undergrounder by Maria for 4 more runs in the third for a 6-1 score. Dimitri then netted 2 more runs in the 6th with a single to make it 8-4 Bombers. Despite a 4-run lead, I wanted nothing more than to get a second win this season, which the Bombers thankfully did. The final score, 10-5 Bombers. Put it in the books! Sadly, the Bombers would lose their next game 5-2 against its big brother, Metsy. The final game of the regular season had them paired against the Oakland Athletics. Since this was the final game, I wanted to end this season on a high note despite all the low notes, but this game, much like the others, did not come easy. The Athletics were up 5 runs in the 7th, in part thanks to Jason Giambi, who terrorized the Bombers with his gigantic bat all game. Seemingly nothing could get past this wall of meat, and striking him out was about as likely as striking a wet match. With a score of 3-8, the Bombers, being the scrappy underdogs, made some noise in the 9th though, with Bomber killer Jason Giambi on the mound of all people. The determination emanated from this team in ways I couldn't believe. This noise was started by Boom Boom hitting a single followed up with Maria hitting a clutch undergrounder that scores Boom Boom from first. An out-of-play double hit by Ernie let Maria score to make it 8-5 Athletics. Luann with a single gets runners on first and second. Stephanie then hits another single to score Ernie from second. No thanks to Ernie's incredible speed and not horrible defense by the Athletics. 2 on, 2 out, it was up to Pete Wheeler who could be the go-ahead run. I got excited. My heart started racing. We could actually win this. Would the Bombers end their season on a positive note with a huge come-from-behind win? Pete would line out for a final score of 8-6 Athletics. A heartbreaker. The Bombers would finish their first season with a record of 2-12. With the first season in the books, a news page with the headline reads, "Bad hops end in high hopes. Team still smiling, learned a lot." Then the article reads, "The Bombers' record of 2-12 did not qualify them for the playoffs." Quote, "These kids played some tough games this season," says Coach Raw as Wario. "We'll play better than ever next year." Well, I don't know if it'll be next year, but we'll see. Can't say this is how I envisioned the Blue Bombers' first season. To be honest, with the options I picked, I knew what I was getting into. But I figured the season would be slightly better. Maybe 4 or 5 wins. Still, this team played their best and had some sweet spots. For example, the Bombers pitched the most strikeouts this season with 126. Which tells me that, despite Luann's 5.26 ERA, that she's a force to be reckoned with on the mound. A good amount of batters also performed very well, such as Pete Wheeler, who had 9 RBIs with a .650 slugging percentage, along with a .380 batting average. In fact, the only batters who didn't bat over 300 were Marky, Boom Boom, and surprisingly enough, Mike Piazza, although he had a slugging percentage of .459 with 11 RBIs, the most on the team. The main issue was, as I mentioned, just getting the players home. It just didn't work out that way. Overall, this is a surprisingly deep baseball game with simple yet engaging gameplay. Although I got smoked time and time again, I had fun trying to figure out how to make contact without swing spot on, and also judging where the ball would go. And when I hit that sweet spot, man, it was satisfying. Defense, on the other hand, is a mixed bag. While the controls are simple, I found it very hard to judge where a ball would land, and it seemed like whenever the other team hit one into the outfield, it would be more than likely to drop for a hit no matter how hard I tried to position my fielders. Regardless, I can't wait to check out this year's Backyard Baseball and see how much of this gameplay it retains. Maybe I'll even do a second season with the same or most of the roster after it comes out. I am interested in seeing if they include pro players and who they'll include, or even if they'll bring back previous pros. Do you think they should bring back pro players? If so, who would you like to see included? Let me know in the comments.
Mike Piazza.